gentlemen, coming in the east door is Magda. So if you give her, please, a nice warm welcome as you come in.
Sometimes when we look at history, we think, and especially when we're young, that's something that we'll never touch. It's something that doesn't relate to us. But she is part of that history, and she's here.
Hi, Magda. I'm wondering, how long were you spying?
Our generation tends to glorify what the word spy means.
Yeah.
What did your job as a spy actually entail?
What do you want?
I was just wondering, did you ever find out what happened to your brother after he was taken?
I was in the military for 20 years, and I really feel that you're a Medal of Honor recipient.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, Magda.
How are you?
I feel good today. What about you?
Fine, thank you very much.
When you sleep at night, do you dream?
Yes,
Black and white or color?
black and white.
What language do the people in your dreams speak?
Polish mostly, and then English.
You're 93.
Yeah, I'm 93. Oh, sweetheart, I am not thinking so much on my age, as I'm thinking more on my younger years and how courageous I was. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. My father's name was Ludwig Krzymuski. He was a lawyer. He never practiced law. I knew that he lived from the oil business. He was an unusual man. Gutsy, very sophisticated, and he knew what he wanted. My mother's name was Helena Krzymuska. She was a gorgeous woman. She had blue eyes and black hair. And she had a classic, beautiful nose, full lips. She was quite beautiful. And I suppose that's why my father fell in love with her. Her parents were owner of a restaurant in the city of Brody. My father's father was one of the dignitaries who happened to settle in Brody. But the one thing that I know for sure is that they fell in love. My mother was Jewish and my father wasn't. And consequently, they had a big thing to overcome. My brother was Adam Krzymuski. I can't say anything else but that he was a sweetheart. Adam was 7 years older. So he was already in school when I was still in diapers, I think. Anyhow, he loved me particularly. I was totally in love with my brother. We enjoyed each other very much. Adam was a good man, very, very persistent. And when he set his mind to something, he did it. My name is Magdalena Krzymuska. My mom saw a little girl from Hungary that she adored. She was named Magda. And she decided when she has a daughter, her name is going to be Magda. And so that's where the name came from. I was born in Lwów, the city of lions, which is on the eastern border of Poland. It was a gorgeous city, absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, it now belongs to Ukraine. I just love the city. There was a lot of markets and a lot of cafeterias and cafe houses. The city was full of fun, and we really enjoyed it. I was in a fabulous school. I was there before the war. The Polish people were very happy. The Poles are really artistic and very decent people. In Poland, generally, the religion was very important because most of the Poles were Catholics, at least 75% were. And my mother, being Jewish, was not that welcome. In Poland at that time, when your father was Catholic, the kids took his name and his religion. As my mother let us know, we were open-minded for all kinds of religion. We were half Catholics. So just as easy as it say half Jewish, we were half Catholic. You couldn't take it away from us. When I sat there, my father couldn't go by without kissing me. He just couldn't. I felt very important. My mother was very loving. She was very dear to me. But the fact was that we didn't sit down and talk very much. However, she was always there for me. My parents, they gave me a lot of advice. They were very, very generous with me. We lived very well. We had a driver and chauffeur, and my father always expected to have him driven to places. We had homes in Vienna and also in Berlin. In Berlin, we had a house, but in Vienna, we had an apartment, I think. Vienna is gorgeous, absolutely beautiful city. I was very happy every time I was in Vienna. So was my mother. We just loved the city. In Berlin, too. Berlin was not so welcoming as Vienna. The Berliners were a little bit aloof.
Hund,
Hund,
Katze,
Katze,
Tasse.
Tasse,
I speak German, Russian, Polish, and English. I happen to speak German because my nanny was German. I spoke fluent German because she wouldn't speak Polish, you know. I had a mother who spoke German and a father who also spoke German, not so good. He spoke with a thick accent. I mean, we had laughs with it, you know. My brother didn't learn the language so well. He learned Latin and Greek, every other language, but not German. He didn't want a German. Naturally, for the Poles, German was not a language that you should be bragging about. My father and I were sitting together, and my father confessed that he had a girlfriend, and my mother was very furious. I can't blame her. My mother at that time left for Warsaw and stayed in Warsaw. So I was staying with two aunts. I had Giselle and Elizabeth, because he felt that he needed a woman's hand. And they were my father's sisters, and they never got married. They were old maids, you know. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to get married and have 2 children and live in Poland, and that's the whole story. But naturally, the life didn't want it that way. I was about 16 when I heard about the Nazis. I heard the word Nazis before the war.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II. Poland's 34 million inhabitants, crushed, scattered, and enslaved.
We knew that the war started because of the Germans coming in, shooting and killing people. When the Germans came in, we were very much concerned about my mother, naturally, because she was of Jewish origin, and we didn't know what they're going to do. She came back to Lviv, and she absolutely stayed there with us. We sat in a coffee house, and somebody came over and said, the Nazis are coming. And my mother said, oh no. I mean, she couldn't believe it, you know? For some reason or other, we did believe it, because eventually we came to recognize that they were here. There was no place to go, because the Germany was on one side, and Russia was on the other, and Czechoslovakia was down below. Russia was not that willing to take us on. And as a matter of fact, those Poles that ran to Russia got eventually destroyed anyhow.
With little to stand in their way, the Nazi divisions roar across the Polish countryside and reveal for the first time the machines and weapons that are to terrorize a freedom-loving people. Tanks speed the advance as a Polish town is about to fall. From the air, Germans are cutting off all avenues of escape for the Poles, who are now trapped in several pockets.
My father knew what was coming. He probably did, because he was in the First World War. He realized what they were, the Nazis. However, none of us realized how brutal they were. But we realized enough to think that it would be better if we're not there, you know, if we're not in their way. We went from Lviv to Krakow, from Krakow to Warsaw, because in Krakow we lived a very short time. And in Warsaw, my father felt that we better lost in this huge city, you know, rather than in Krakow, which was much smaller. Warsaw was very nice, but we weren't that welcome, because a lot of people came from the east border because they ran away to main town. We settled in Warsaw, and we had to wait until they came.
The siege of Warsaw. The big attack begins 31 miles outside the capital. Shells are dropped into Warsaw without let-up as day by day the Nazis forge a tighter ring of steel around the almost helpless city.
We felt tragic because we realized that the Germans occupied part of Poland, and it was horrible. We never liked Germans or Russians, because the Germans and the Russians were enemies of ours, and they always occupied our country. Nazis came into Poland because they wanted the land, and there was rich land and very well taken care of, because the Poles were 70% peasants, and they had wonderful crop. Poland was always a treat for Germany.
Warsaw is lost. A vicious Nazi attack has left the city in ruins. In less than 30 days, Poland has fallen. Warsaw's final surrender comes on September 27th.
When they came into Poland, they started ruling with a very hard hand. I really think that the Nazis were against the Poles just as much as they were against the Jews. They took our land, they took our home, they took everything they could, and just accepted it for themselves. Very, very depressing.
The occupation of Warsaw by the enemy is now complete. The Poles have fought bravely against this foe, but were overwhelmed by the sheer superiority of numbers and fighting equipment. Polish defenders come up to surrender their arms. Germans claim sizable quantities of guns and ammunition taken throughout the country. There was no time for the Poles to destroy their weapons. So quickly did the Nazis move in and dominate each position.
The Polish army fought courageously, but the German army was much stronger. And eventually they destroyed it. Whatever is left over of the army was put together, and they created a new army. It was the Polish underground army. My brother was with the underground army for quite a while. Adam got involved with the Polish underground army because his mother was Jewish. When I was 17, he was 24. So even though I was still kept a little innocent, so to say, he knew very well what was going on. During the war, when the Germans came to occupy my country, my brother mentioned something to me that maybe I should meet some Poles that he knew. He said, I was with the underground army and they need somebody to go to Berlin and somebody to go to Vienna who speaks German fluently and who can pass for German. I remember they said to me, you know, you speak perfect German. Why don't you go for us to Germany? I said, why not? And that was the end. Hitler was an enemy of ours. We had no use for him. He was a hated man. I knew of him long before the Nazis came into Poland, because just like Stalin was in Russia, so was Hitler in Germany.
Dieses Volk zu erhalten ist unsere höchste Aufgabe.
He wasn't that mistrusted in Germany as he was in Poland. They accepted him. But he was a miserable man in Poland. I think he must have been nuts, because he went after people all the time, and he never rested. Either he or his people were working all the time.
Nazi heads look normal enough on the outside, but what makes these heads different is what goes on inside. This little thinking machine specializes in perfecting methods of destruction. The most ingenious weapon that this brain has perfected is this. The Nazis developed this weapon in peacetime. The German citizen was the guinea pig. They poured the stuff on, and if his right arm went up, he was certified as a member of the great master race. Others weren't eligible. A weapon of war. Play race against race.
Aryan, 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 this race, that race, this race, that race, this race, that race, this race.
And fear and suspicion, prejudice and hatred had done their work in Europe. Split up for Nazi conquest.
The Nazis changed a lot the characteristics of Poland. When you came into a store or something, you had to say Heil Hitler. The Gestapo was always on the streets, always looking for victims. They had total interaction every day. And every time they saw somebody on the street, they always questioned it. I very rarely went on a streetcar. In Warsaw, if they were on a streetcar, they let them get out of the streetcar, and then eventually they picked up whoever they wanted to pick up, you know, whether young men or whatever. All they need to do was speak up, and they would be put against the wall and shot. That's as simple as that. They were very nasty, very, very nasty. In my mind was horror, because there was no way of defending yourself. The Nazis, they were there for 5 years. In the beginning, they took the Jews and the Poles, mostly Jews, and put them in the ghettos. Ghettos were part of a city which was mostly Jewish occupied. They did it in Warsaw as well as in Krakow or any place. I couldn't see what was going on in ghetto, but I can imagine, because some people escaped from ghetto and they came over to our side, and they spoke about it very, very clearly, that the ghetto life was horrible. They didn't have enough to eat, or they had enough to drink. Everything that was taken for granted in my part of the town was not so naturally supplied for the Jewish people. As long as you had money, you can get anything you wanted. We had certainly enough bread, we had enough Polish ham, we had anything we wanted. During the war, my family, they changed to great extent because they have never been worried about anything. And really, they start worrying about every time we left, every time we came. When my mother went to the city, we were worried about her all the time. All the time. My brother more than I. We tried to protect her, but the Gestapo stopped her. And she was sure that they have her number. She was kind of nervous about it. But lo and behold, they never suspected her for being Jewish. Never. Because she had wonderful features and blue eyes. And the last thing they suspected was that she's Jewish. They let her go.
Were you really a spy?
I beg your pardon?
Did you engage in espionage activity?
Yes, I did. Not espionage, just delivering certain very important letters to Germany, to people who were in Germany, or the other way around, to Warsaw. My name is Magda Kaspritzki, and I ran missions for the Polish underground to Berlin and Vienna, as I was sent to. I was about 17 or 18 when I ran the missions for Polish underground. During the trip to Berlin and Vienna, I called myself Magda Heiß. Heiß means, I think, hot in German. Dr. Heiß was a really God-sent person. He came from part of Germany on the western border. He was obviously not a Nazi. He was a doctor, and he came to my parents and he explained himself what he was. Then he said that I could use the name. And then I got the passport, which was fabricated by Poles. If I had a mission to contact, I would normally get ready. I had a passport, and I could use it for 2 weeks, that's all. Every time I came back to the passport office, they asked me why. And I had to lie something or other. So when I went to Berlin or Vienna, I was more of a messenger than spy. Most of the time, I memorized the message. I knew whom I was supposed to meet. I never did contact them. But if they contact me, then I knew that they were the right people. Consequently, they came in and they asked me the questions, and I just gave them the message. When I went to Berlin, I stayed overnight. Berlin was really bombed. It was destroyed. The bombers came mostly in at night. They came every night and they bombed. We went into the cellar. We had a number of people in the cellar, with the children and everybody. It was normal human behavior. When you were in danger, you had to hide. I mean, nothing else there to do. So naturally we went to basement or cellar, whatever it was, wherever you might have been a little safer, but not much. My parents didn't know much about what I was doing because they knew that I traveled to Berlin and Vienna, but they didn't know anything more. They must have been thinking that we're doing something forbidden. We couldn't discuss it with anybody, not even your own brother. Somehow, we got away with it without having a difficult time with my parents. I don't know what the hell exactly they knew, but I think they had a general idea what we were doing.
The Patriots go underground to go to work with secret printing presses, turning out more than 100 publications for the people.
Paper had to be stolen from the Germans, so had the printing ink.
Most of the people who were in Polish underground army, most of the time they were scared. They're really scared. I was really very scared. And most of the time I went in with an open mind and open heart, because it was the only way I could do it. I didn't feel any fear until they pinned me down on a street, let's put it this way. But then eventually I was a little bit afraid. The Gestapo, first of all, they started knowing us too well. They realized that we were coming across, and they became very, very inquisitive. And then I realized that there was a reason for it. I was in Berlin when they tried to assassinate Hitler, and it was in the middle of Berlin. And I was going someplace or other with my Warsaw boots on, which were like felt. So they stopped me and they said, "Are you Polish?" I said, "No, I'm not." And they say, "Well, you have a Polish shoes on." I said, "So what? I bought them in Warsaw." So I had a chutzpah. You know what a chutzpah is? I said, "Why shouldn't I wear them?" "Oh, because they're very Polish." I said, "So what? I bought them there." They insisted that I was Polish, but naturally they couldn't prove it to me because I had documents. I'm not scared easy.
I can tell.
No, really, I'm not very easily scared. I believed in a certain amount of courage that you have to show in order to content the Germans.
The Germans systematically reduced the Warsaw ghetto to rubble, exterminating uncounted thousands. The underground still cover public places with their symbols of resistance, and every day sees new examples of their unrelenting courage in acts of sabotage. So efficient is their work that during the year, only 2/3 of Nazi troops and supplies reach their destinations. They dare to string up caricatures of Hitler. Poland will never die.
The cause was very important, and I think it was important to me and to all the Poles that we do it right. The underground army, we fought for our own freedom, for Poland. It wasn't like individual. It was the mass of people trying to get free. Our freedom, it's terribly important when you don't have it, because you don't realize it, what it means, until you lose the freedom of anything that shows you what the freedom is. And the Nazis had to go. That was positively. But we had to wait until they decided to move. We waited for 5 years before they left. I cannot tell you what it meant to us that they were sitting on top of us. They were cruel and mean and ugly, and there was no end to it. They have destruction camps. We didn't hear very much. Radio you couldn't hear, television wasn't there, so we only heard as hearsay that they were cruel in the camps and without any sympathy for the individual people. They came out as a gossip, and eventually they became the truth. They used to have the trucks standing around the corner. They separated them, women, men, and children. They weren't really that discreet. In 1943, I realized that the trucks were not really going to a camp, but they were going to be destructed. And that was very, very hard to believe, including the fact that my mother was Jewish too. They either could find her among us, or they could find her and us as well, because it was no practical reason for them not to do it, because they dug people from 4th generation. They didn't care. There's nothing to say. It's just self-explanatory. You cannot describe this kind of horror to anybody. It's very hard to believe that people could do that to each other. Theresienstadt. We knew about its existence, but we didn't really know what was going on there. Never anything good. Adam was arrested in Prague when he was there visiting. The Nazis made his life very difficult because he was then sent to Theresienstadt, which was a horrible camp. I went to Prague just 24 hours after he left. And I went to the hotel, and when I asked the hotel clerk what happened to my brother, he said, unfortunately, they picked him up. And that was all I needed. I went directly to the Gestapo, didn't have any fear. I told you I was nuts. And I said to the Gestapo man, I said, would you let my brother go? He was only here visiting. I couldn't realize how did they have the nerve to arrest my brother. But I think they did because they had some tip-off. I don't know exactly what it was. But I had a feeling that they probably didn't have the right to do that. The right, they didn't have to have a right, you know. They did what they wanted. I said to him, are you crazy? Do you want to arrest me too? And he said, you see that button underneath the desk? I said, yes, I see it. And he says, no, I just have to push it. You won't be able to open the door. And I said, what, are you trying a game with me or what? Let me get the hell out of here. That's exactly what I said, I think. Obviously, I was kind of cute and young, you know, because he let me go. I had the nerve to go to the Gestapo. I don't know how I did. How I exposed myself to all the danger without even fear. I couldn't understand that. It was really beyond me. Because right now I would have been scared going just across the street. Then I didn't seem to be afraid of anything. Adam was sitting in a camp, and we were really in panic. We didn't know what the hell they're gonna do with him. And we didn't know what to do. We had very few communication from him in a camp because, first of all, they couldn't write. If they did, they had to smuggle it. We only heard from him in a camp, maybe once or twice. His only communication was, get me out of here. There wasn't very much you could do. All you could say is pray, because there wasn't anything to talk to the Gestapo people. And they were all in charge. Consequently, he had to stay there until the time that they will decide to let him go, which could be for never. War is a cruel, horrible imposition on people who want to live in peace. But you have to explain it to somebody eventually, which is very difficult because you cannot really describe it. You have to feel it, experience it on your nerves, on your life. And it's like a very long nightmare. And it comes back to me over and over again. And I'm trying not to let it come to the surface.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan, a state of war.
We didn't know what's going on in other countries. We didn't even hear all the nuances of the war until the war ended. We were too much preoccupied with our own troubles to listen to everybody else. We only waited for the end of the war, and that means freedom for us.
Arrogant, well-trained, the Nazis marched through Warsaw's streets. The world was permitted to view this display of military pomp and expected to bow before Germany's might. But the events of years following Poland's setback were to tell another story. The Allies are fighting to prove that these goose-stepping legions are not supermen, that the events of September 1939 shall never happen again.
The war didn't shift so early because the occupation started in 1939, but they did not leave until 1945. We knew sooner or later they have to withdraw. And the reason was that the Germans occupy us against the law and against everything that dictated humane behavior. We had hope that eventually this occupation will end. And we were right.
Entering the final phase of victory over Hitler's Nazis, Yank armies swarm across Western Germany, bringing devastation to cities of the Reich.
Well, the war ended with a big noise, you know. We realized that was the end of it when they started withdrawing and they started getting out of the city. It was pure happiness. It was tremendous change because we felt free. That's not something that you can describe. Warsaw was terribly destroyed. So consequently, the Warsaw was not the same as it was during the war or after the war. Lviv became part of Ukraine after the war. Ukraine never existed as a country. I felt just horrible because I loved the city. And we all did. But I never would return under the rule of the Ukrainians. Most of the people from Lviv left during the war or after the war. In Berlin, the house that belonged to my dad was still standing there on Ehrenbergstrasse, if I remember correctly. I remember the number, 34. Partially it was destroyed, but other than that, it was really livable. Well, we didn't know if my brother survived or not. The time they let him eventually go was when the war ended. Adam left the camp and went to Prague because he thought his last contact were in Prague. Adam was very sick and really fainted a few times on the road. But it was fortunate for us because the Prague woman saw my brother practically half dead on a bench, and she asked him to go with her. And she took care of him. She is the woman who saved my brother from the streets of Prague. She was a very wonderful woman. But we never had a chance to thank her because we were in two different countries. Adam came out of Prague, just found out where we were, and when he found out where we were, he went directly to Vienna. We were rejoicing because we never thought we'd see him again. We never, really, that was a very big question if we would ever see him again. When he returned from the camp, he looked very skinny. Very, very skinny. Skin and bone. He was a victim of the Nazis. And he survived it. How he did it, I don't know. He just did it. I was very grateful for God. It's very typical for people who went into concentration camps. They never spoke about it. Remembering all those things are not very pleasant. Adam just sat quiet and never mentioned it again. I survived in spite of the difficulties that come in my way. First of all, the war, living during the war, and then right after the war, I had a difficult time. What I did was dealing with the used cars. Everybody needed a car at that time. And later, I survived. Americans and English and French, the new occupational army, they all were in different parts of Berlin. But the Americans took our part of Berlin.
As the Yanks arrive, civilians turn out to wonder at the fate that awaits a conquered nation.
They came to occupy our house. The house was right across the street from a commissary. And then my mother said something in Polish and says, I hope they are done over their head that way. That's all she noticed, you know. A soldier turned around and he says, what did you say, lady? She fell off the couch. She couldn't believe it because really, he understood Polish. Matthew Kaspritzki was his name. And he was from Polish family in Buffalo. I couldn't even understand how the hell he carried that name. So the first thing I asked him, I said, how can you carry a name that difficult? So all the brothers were in the war. He said, well, we all served in the army and we all were carrying the same name. And so I said, well, that's fabulous for you, but not very easy for other people. Matthew was a major in the United States Army. Major Kaspritzki was a commanding officer of 1/4 of the city. He was a kind, very distinguished man. We hit it off right away. I liked him and he liked me. So when he went to America, he wrote me letters, which were very funny because we couldn't read them, you know.
My Goldilocks is sweet. Her name is Magda. Her eyes are blue. Her hair is golden. Her teeth are pearly. And also her hair is curly.
They were very humorous and very nice letters. He wrote mostly about America and how different it looked to him after all the years in the army. We had a very wonderful correspondence. He was very, very polite to my parents. They considered him like a child. He took my father on every trip he went. He called him Dad. He was very good man. He used to come in with his trench coats. He had those huge pockets in it, and he used to start pulling out bread, butter, whatever. And my mom said, Jesus, where does he carry that all? I wasn't that young and I wasn't that innocent. I knew very well that I wanted to marry that guy for many reasons. He was Polish, first of all, and could speak the language. He was an army soldier, and that he was decent, very decent human being. Oh, he did ask me in Europe to marry. He asked my dad first, very formal. And then he asked me. We get married in Berlin. It was kind of a large wedding, yeah. And we had a lot of people there. And we stayed in Berlin for a while, and then we moved on. When we moved on, we went actually to America. And we went with a boat. I never forget that. We went to Buffalo first, which is a Pollock town. They were all very loving people. And then from Buffalo to Los Angeles.
Come to Los Angeles, the city of stars. Majestic palm trees and year-round sunshine await in this Southern California paradise. You'll enjoy a cornucopia for all the senses.
Anyhow, we came to Los Angeles. From Los Angeles, we went to Phoenix, Arizona. And we came back here. It wasn't that hard for me to leave Europe. It was hard for my parents. And for my brother. Because they decided to leave Europe because we went. We decided to have, at that time, not children, but we have the responsibility toward my parents. That's what we did. Matthew took care of my parents and my brother when they first came to America. Every time he went to shop for us, he always shopped the same thing for my parents. And then he put it in the freezer, didn't even tell my mother. But I remember she called me and says, "Where have you been here? When?" And I said, "No, I wasn't there. Matthew must have been there." He was always wonderful in that respect. He was the kindest, sweetest guy that you ever imagined. There was never anything crooked about him. Never, never. He would never offend anybody by knowing it. He was very straightforward and very delicate. The time that we were here was always very important to us because we decided to like the city. However, it's never the same as my hometown. They have no comparison. I couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak English at all. So consequently, it was strange. First of all, the shopping and everything else was very different. My father would turn to the Polish paper. Life wasn't easy, very difficult, because he was unimportant here, with the exception of the few church and people that were around the church. And I don't know that he was very happy here. My mother, she was happier. Eventually she went to Saks Fifth Avenue and got work there because I did. Adam, he had a son, and he lived for the son, Andrew. Matthew, he was actually working in the insurance business. We lived in different places. So eventually it took time for us to take a house. And then when we had a house, it was on Sierra Bonita. My Sierra Bonita life was very joyful because I had everything I wanted. And the house was big and very comfortable. We had a happy life. We had a very, very comfortable, easy life. What I love about the United States the most is the fact that they allowed my parents to come here, allowed my brother to come here, and they were all living here together with a very, very nice house. There was rather reasons that I thanked the God for them leaving them here. Yeah, you have to God. You have to take the God.
The guns are quiet now. the papers of peace have been signed, and the oceans of the earth are filled with ships coming home. In faraway places, men dreamed of this moment, but for some men, the moment is very different from the dream. This hospital is one of the many for the care and treatment of the psychoneurotic soldier. Now in the darkness of the ward emerge the shapes born of darkness, the terror of things half remembered, dreams of battle, the torments of uncertainty and fear and loneliness.
Matthew had it rather heavy.
Get in the hole. Shells are bursting all around.
He insisted that we sleep in 2 different beds. Not in only different beds, but different rooms. And I couldn't understand that. And I said, my God, why are you so funny? And he said, because I'd like to protect you from my own outbursts, which happened at night. He could hardly ever fall asleep without having nightmares. It was really hard for me to believe that he had it so long. It was very difficult for him to accept it. My brother passed about 12 years ago. My parents passed before that. My mother died at 68 and my father died at 76.
If Adam was here, what would you say to Adam? What would you talk to him about?
Adamie, Adamczku, ja jestem wdzięczna, że jeszcze żyję i że mam Pana Boga. Matthew died 33 years ago. It was horrible. I couldn't even believe it. It was like somebody knocked me off, you know? He just lay down and never woke up. Maybe he called me at night, I don't know. I was in a different bedroom. He was about 60.
How long were you married?
34 years. When he died.
Some people say we only fall in love once in our lifetime. Is that true?
Yes, I think so. I think so. He was a generous, very kind, very sweet guy. I adored everything he did. And actually, I have never been tired of him because he was full of surprises. And he was a wonderful sense of humor. I feel he was very unfair leaving me like alone.
And how much do you miss all of them?
Very much. Very much. Because in all truthfulness, I'm by myself.
Do you feel that they were here with you now?
Not really.
Some people might go to heaven.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very few. Very few.
Will you?
No, I doubt it.
Why?
Because I doubt it. In 2006, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And at this point, I don't know what's going on there. Really, I don't know. Comparatively speaking, with all my experiences during the war and after the war, this was nothing important. It was just like other thing to overcome. Yeah, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't return. And my return.
What's your life like now?
Not very happy. Not happy. I can sit here by the window and look out and look at it totally stark-eyed because I don't know what's going on. Walking is a problem. The eyesight is very bad. I can't see even a pill written on my bottle. I don't see it. No, that's altogether different. You see, no, I don't like to talk about it because the stories here, not very, I don't know. I don't know. I'm grateful for the roof over my head, for the kitchen, for everything else. Everything that was not so easy to find during the war in Poland. I'm grateful for the difference between now and then. I'm grateful for being alive. For being alive and taking my parents here, and taking my brother here, and all thanks to my husband. I'm grateful to God for being here. I'm completely resigned to the fact that I'm old. At this point, I'm kind of free to enjoy my old age and do what I want. Whatever time comes, that is a good time for me. People my age are really not existing. They're very few. Believe me, there is very few people who my age who still feel strong. And I do feel strong. I am not thinking so much on my age, as I'm thinking more on my younger years and how courageous I was. Because really, I don't know how I did it, but I did it.
Magdalena, these flowers are for you, and this is the dedication to this memorial that I thought we needed to honor the victims of the war, okay? So these are for you, and I'm honored that you're the one who dedicated this for us, for the college, and it will be a tradition that we will follow.
Thank you
okay?
very much.
Thank you.
Hi, you must have been really brave.
Well, I was scared, but I didn't know any difference.
It was you. It's an honor to meet you.
I'm Tiffany Jones.
What are you?
I'm Tiffany Jones. It's very nice to meet you. I'm very happy to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't know what I was doing.
You're so brave.
I didn't know what I was doing. That was, thank God, the reason that I had guts to do it.
It's really a great honor to see you ever since high school. I'm so happy to see wonderful people like you sitting around.
After my husband died, this one is the last one. The last Hanukkah present that my mother gave me before she died. And when do you have a hope? And from there, they are blessed.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.